My thoughts on immigration are, if you saw that over 130 people were massacred by Islamic terrorists in Paris, some of whom claim to be Syrian refugees, you shouldn't have those people who could possibly be terrorists claiming to be Syrian refugees come over here in mass. People say, oh, there's a great vetting process. You don't know what we do to figure out who's a terrorist and just a regular citizen. Well, let me ask you this. Why was there just over almost 70 people arrested today in the United States? I posted a link in the description box. Many of these people are so-called refugees from Islamic Muslim nations. Bosnia, Somalia, possibly even Syria, Lebanon. You just had a terrorist attack in Beirut. You had terrorist attacks in northern Nigeria. And people talk about these things not being covered as much as the story in France, especially the so-called pro-blacks. They say, "Oh, you're against you're loving your oppressor, and the French killed you, and all this and that," which is just BS. Because what does the average just individual who happens to be in France at that time, who may not even be French, have to do with what the government did hundreds of years ago, or with the current way the government operates? Right? You don't know anything about those people that died. But the reason why people were so passionate about what happened in France is because it's not a common thing to happen in Paris, France, to have Islamic terrorist attacks. And because of what's going on with the Hijra, the Hijra, which is the Islamic word for jihad by immigration, that's going on right now from people coming from quote unquote Syria, which may or may not be Syrians. You got a lot of combat aged men coming from the Middle East. They could be coming from Iraq. They could be coming from Libya. They could be coming from Afghanistan, who falsify documents to claim that they're Syrian to go to these European places to spread Islam and also just to be able to live off government benefits, right? You don't know who's coming in that mix that's going to be just a productive citizen, a welfare moocher, or a terrorist. You have no idea of knowing who that is. And people are protesting all over Europe. There's been anti-immigrant, anti-Muslim protests in Poland, in Sweden. People are starting to burn down the camps, the little shelters where they have the immigrants. People are starting to fight back. It was a guy that got stabbed in the Netherlands, which is right there by Germany, who wants to have 100,000 immigrants, according to Angela Merkel. She wants to have 100,000 refugees in Germany. That's going to directly impact Netherlands, who also wants to have a bunch of refugees. One of the guys who was the assistant to the mayor or the president or somebody in the city in the Netherlands got stabbed because of that. People are starting to fight back. It's going to be a problem. So with all of that being in the background, what happened in Paris, where you got at least 3 of the people that were identified as so-called Syrian refugees, it's a big deal. And the reason why it's not covered that much in a place like Nigeria, northern Nigeria, Lebanon, Somalia, somewhere like that, is because you already have you have a Islamic place already. you have terrorism there. I mean, northern Nigeria, that's Hausa, and they're Islam, and they're Islamic, they're Muslim. So it's not unlikely to have Islamic terrorism in a place that has Islamic people. It's common. You had the girls that were kidnapped in northern Nigeria. That was by Boko Haram, which is an Islamic group. And the same people are committing the terrorist attacks all the time up there. The Nigerians themselves know that Islam is a problem. They know that the Hausa are the problem. They don't want to really be associated. The Igbo, Yoruba, they don't really want to be associated with the Hausa because of their religion mostly. And that's what it is. You got people that have clashing ideologies. Now, people say, oh, it's racist to deny immigrants. You had the Jewish people, and what about the Jews? And people say they didn't want the Jews to come into the country, and they needed refuge too. Look, that's a whole different ball of wax. But it's a false comparison. I mean, how many terrorist attacks were the Jews accused of before they came over here? Did the Jews just kill 150 people? I'm not saying all Syrians are responsible for the terror attacks in Paris, but you did have 3 Syrian refugees that were responsible for it. And you know that ISIS has said, hey, we're going to send our fighters amongst them. So how are you able to tell who's who? When people are able to falsify documents that fool even some of the best experts in the document authentication field. It was a reporter that had all false documents claiming he was a Syrian and gave them to a German expert authenticator. A German expert authenticator. This would be the guy that checks documents to see if you are one of the 100,000 people to get into the country that Angela Merkel wants. Okay, he's going to be a gatekeeper. Okay, I think the guy had a driver's license, a passport, and one other document. I forget what he was. The other document that I forget, it was past, he was like, nah, that's not a real document. A driver's license is not a real document. But the passport, he says, oh, this is real. This is a real passport. But they were all fake. And this is a reporter giving him this and telling him, yo, check it out. So he knows that it could be fake. Now, what about a so-called Syrian refugee saying, here's my documents? Do you think that he would have a better chance of figuring out what's fake and what's real, or a worse chance? Because he has to go into it thinking that this may or may not be. And then you got to think about the person's ideology. Are they going to be a bleeding heart to where they think everybody that comes in is just going to be right, and it's going to be less likely to be on the edge and scrutinize it? It's going to be a lot of problems with that whole situation going on in Europe. Europeans are kind of like Americans in the sense of you have people that want to be politically correct and say, well, it's racist to not allow immigrants, quote unquote immigrants or migrants or asylum seekers or refugees, whatever you want to call them, into the country. But then you have the people who say, look, we are struggling over here ourselves. We got homelessness. We got unemployment. We have people that are hungry, and you want to bring in thousands of immigrants, thousands of so-called migrants from a third world violent country with a violent religion in mass. How do you think that's going to impact our society in a positive way? We have our own problems over here. That's what's going on in Europe. That's why that is part of what makes the Paris, France thing so big internationally, because all of that had been leading up to this. And it's not big in a place like Nigeria, northern Nigeria, because that kind of violence goes on all the time because you have an established Islamic community. And where you have established Islamic communities, you're going to have violence, especially in the third world, because that's part of how they're able to get attention and to get money. And then you're going to have it in the first world as well, because now they want to take over that place and make it be like the third world that they come from. They want to spread their religion. This has been going on since 600 AD. Nothing has really changed in 1,400 years. This is why you had the Inquisition and the Crusades. It was because they had to fight it. And you're seeing that start to come up again. It would already have happened if it wasn't for the politically correct nature of so many people in the European countries that feel guilty over slavery and past sins of their fathers. But at a certain point, the safety of your people has to come first. And that's where I'm at with it. as far as bringing them over here to the United States, I say if you want to help, if you want to be humanitarian, if you want to be somebody that is a bleeding heart, I say you can give them help over there. Just like my man Ben Carson said, if you want to give them help, help them to be established over there in their in their neck of the woods. Matter of fact, let's appeal to some of our allies over there in the Middle East. Let's appeal to Saudi Arabia. They got plenty of money and plenty of space on the Al Jazeera, which means the Arabian Peninsula. You got plenty of space in Sudan, Egypt, Kuwait, Yemen, UAE, Bahrain, all that. Send them over there. They speak Arabic already. They got plenty of money and they got plenty of space. And if you need security, we already over there anyway. We got air bases over there. We can help them with security. Right? Or we put boots on the ground in Syria. Now, I don't want to put boots on the ground in Syria. But what's going to happen? What are you going to do? You going to allow them to come over here? I think not. And Germany and other countries in the European Union should not let them over there as well. Germany and other countries in the EU, the European Union, should not let them to pour into their countries in mass, because you don't know what you're getting or who you're getting. You could be getting disease. You can be getting terrorists. You could be getting a culture clash. And it's not going to be it's not good. This is why nations exist. I mean, what other reason do you have a nation if you just allow any and everyone to come in? People talk about Australia and how the Aboriginals were conquered by the white man, and it was just all one group of people on that continent island of Australia. But really, it was about 500 different tribes, 500 different tribes of Aboriginals that covered that continent island. They all had their individual space. They all had their little corner of the island continent. And they just had their own customs, religions, whatever. That's how humanity is. It's not meant for people to be smashed together and forced to accept each other's way of life. Because somebody has to acquiesce. If you are brought to a place where everybody is Christian and you want to be Muslim, if you want to continue to be Muslim, you're going to have problems. Because you're going to have to at least bend, if not all the way break, if you want to succeed in a society. Or else you're going to have pockets of whatever your religion and culture is, which can create conflict in the place. Especially if your religion, the way you see it, has violence intertwined with it. Okay, this is the inherent problem with immigration, is the integration part of it. People don't want to integrate into society. They want to remain who they are, and they want you to kowtow to them or let them do whatever they want. Have Sharia law, be able to chop your wife's breasts off, be able to pour acid on people. That's what they want. I'm not saying all, but too many, enough to allow just into the country in mass. And you don't know who's fundamentalist. You don't know who's secular. You don't know who's Christian. You don't know who's Muslim. You don't know who's a terrorist. You don't know who's a homemaker. It's too much. Too soon. Let them stay over there and improve life for them over there. Don't bring them here. Peace.